Hello, hello, hello. We are going to get started in just under a minute. The chat room is open, so if you want to pop in, say hello, let us know where you're watching from, and we're going to get started as soon as everybody has signed in. Hi, everybody, and welcome. My name is Ronnie, and I am one of the bloggers here at Romance by the Book. We are so incredibly excited to have you here at our Romance According to Sonya Singh author event. Before we get started, I have a few quick housekeeping items to go over. First, I want to say a couple thank yous. So I want to say thank you to Idea Exchange for being a partner for tonight's event. I'd like to thank May from Simon & Schuster Canada for always being so amazing and helping to bring these kinds of author events to our blog. I also like to thank Sonya for taking time out of her very, very busy schedule to be with us tonight. So this is a live event, which means that if we do run into any technical problems, please do just grin and bear with us. We'll work on fixing them as quickly as we possibly can. This is an author event, which means there's probably going to be some book talk happening. If there are any books that are mentioned, if Sonya or Kayleigh talk about any books, I'll keep track of all of those and I will send them out in an email. So if you've registered on Zoom, you will get a list of all books, all websites, all anything, and I will send that out afterwards. If you are interested in purchasing a copy of Sari Not Sari, Wordsworth Books is our official bookseller for tonight's event. I will put their information in the chat room on Zoom. I will also put their information up on Facebook, so you can buy a copy from them. If you're not from our area, just go out to your local independent bookstores and buy a copy there. I know those little bookstores sure do appreciate your support. And there are 3 different ways that you can ask questions. So at the end of the event, sorry, we're gonna have a Q&A section. So if you are watching on Zoom, you can put them in the chat room or in the Q&A section. If you're watching on Facebook, you can use the comment section there, and I will bring the questions over to Kayleigh. Without further ado, I would love to introduce the wonderful Kayleigh Platz, who is one of our bloggers here at Romance by the Book. Kayleigh is a lifetime writer and avid reader who is passionate about library advocacy. She spends her days writing about people far smarter than herself for the Institute of Quantum Computing. At night, she tells stories to her cat, and hopefully one day other people will read those stories as well. So hi, Kayleigh.
Hi, Ronnie. Thank you very much. Very excited to chat tonight. And what I am going to do is I'm going to introduce Sonya, and she'll come up and we are going to chat. We have a ton of things to get through tonight. But first, let's start off by introducing her. Hi, Sonya. So Sonya is a former entertainment reporter turned communications specialist who has followed her dream of telling stories in front of the camera and now behind the scenes. Her debut novel, Sari Not Sari, is an ode to her own personal dating experiences during which she honed the art of writing the perfect breakup email or text. And I feel like I could have used you many times in my life. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. You can still use me. I'm still available.
Excellent. I think I have to date first in order to get there, but we're going to talk about dating later on.
Okay.
So first of all, I just have to pause and say, this is your debut book. It came out less than a week ago. And I am thrilled, in case someone hasn't picked this book up yet, it hit bestseller lists in Canada this week. It is fun and it is feisty and it is just exactly what I needed in April 2022. So thank you for sharing your story.
Oh, thank you. That's great. I love it. I love that intro.
And I'm going to throw it over to you. Did you want to just give a quick summary of what your story is about?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sari Not Sari is actually a rom-com that I wrote about 2 years ago now. And the story centers around this beautiful, strong South Asian woman who happens to own a breakup agency. So she breaks people up for a living via text, email, letters. And it's for people who have a hard time breaking up with people, whether they've been ghosted, just don't know how to give someone closure, or the easiest way for them to break up with someone is just to leave and never talk to them again, block them through WhatsApp or various means of different kinds of platforms on social media. And during the time of her success at the breakup agency, she's the CEO, she's doing really well. She finds she's getting a lot of questions about her South Asian heritage. And she just doesn't have those questions. And unfortunately, the people that she would go to are no longer around. And so she seeks out someone to be able to answer those questions. And it comes in the form of a client that she normally wouldn't take on. And the client is asking for a temporary breakup, which is, pausing his relationship, a total Ross and Rachel thing that the agency does not do. There's no pauses. And so they just decide to strike a deal, and the both of them take off to his brother's wedding for a week, where my protagonist, Manny, gets a quick crash course in what it's like to be South Asian, according to him and his point of view.
Love it. Love it so much. And where did the idea of this come from?
Well, I think there's a lot of ideas. There's lots of themes in the book, but first and foremost, I myself was kind of in this relationship purgatory, I call it, where I didn't know if I was in the relationship or out of the relationship, and was constantly sort of being almost like dangled a carrot of just like, I like you one day, I love you one day, I don't want to be with you the next day. And so it was particularly difficult during a time where we were in a pandemic and I was feeling quite isolated anyways. And so the breakup was breaking up. And I thought, instead of wasting my valuable time on this particular relationship, that it just sort of hit its last course in terms of being able to be successful, that I thought I would write. And I've been writing for a long time. I've had lots of journals, and I found that going through the breakup, I really couldn't find anybody on my favorite TV show and my favorite books who was going through a breakup and almost could get me to a place that it was humorous. And so I created a character who's South Asian and really kind of poked fun at the whole dating experience and the life of a serial dater and what it's like to go through dating in a time where everything seems to be technology focused, but also have sprinkles of learning more about the South Asian culture. And to me, that was how the book idea came about.
And one of my favorite parts of the book is that on each chapter, you actually have, I have to watch what cover, I guess I'll start with chapter 1. You have a little breakup email or breakup message to the company from different people going through different breakups. I loved that. Can you tell me, was that always part of the book? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So all of those letters, like their Dear John letters, in this case, Dear Breakup letters, are all true. They're all scenarios that I've gone through. Even that particular one, which starts off with, the email being confidential, I actually wrote to somebody in regards to getting some help about something. And the first thing that I said was, is this email confidential? And so, all the scenarios are based on my own dating experiences. I've obviously sprinkled a little bit of humor to them now because I look back and just wonder what I was thinking going through that situation in a relationship. But yeah, that was something that sort of came about after. And I think that it was just to sort of add a testament to the chapter of the book that you are about to dive into. So sort of to give you a glimpse of what you're about to read. And at the end of the day, the book is still humorous. There are some themes that tend to be a little bit stronger than others, a little bit bolder than others. But for me, it was still a laugh out loud moment throughout the book that really pushed me to write it, and started off with those Dear Breakup letters.
I looked forward to the start of every chapter just to see what you were feeding me next for those crazy experiences, which now just seem even more crazy knowing that,
they're real. Yeah.
Like you said, there's a lot of themes in this book. And I love that, romance has always been a genre that tackles big life events and big emotional family and work and life. And I did want to talk about a couple different themes, but my first question is, so you have a background in communications. You're a talented writer. You could write probably any genre. Tell me, why romance?
I love romance. I think that I grew up watching Bollywood movies and already have very unrealistic expectations about love and relationships. You know, in my mind, everything should happen overnight. I see a man across the room, and of course, he should be proposing to me the very next night. You know, that's how it happens in Bollywood movies. So I just grew up in a place where my parents had an arranged marriage, you know, and I think I had to sort of learn what love and relationships meant living in a Western society. And so I have always had fun with it. And I've never really taken anything that's happened in a relationship too seriously. You know, I've been able to get over breakups and move on to the next person after finding the right amount of mental health to be able to move on. But it's a difficult thing to have your heart broken. And I think that humor, whether it's through friends or family or through binging, you know, something horrible on Netflix, tends to get you through this, and maybe a big bottle of wine. So for me, the book is unique because, as you also know, you've read it, it's formatted in a way which is really quick in dialogue, and it tends to really showcase the characters' personalities fairly quickly, versus if you were to read a, you know, typical chick lit rom-com book, you would go into a scenario that was really set up in terms of setting, environment, and really capturing the ambiance of where you were, where I think that my book is different because I tended to lean more towards dialogue and really capturing the characters in that sense. And so it's very quick. It's quite witty, I like to think, and that's how I am in real life. And I think that I wanted to be able to encompass that into the book because a large part of my life and my personality is like that.
Well, and it was such a readable book. I mean, I was reading until wee hours in the morning one night, just because I couldn't put it down, because the characters are so bright and they jump off the page, which leads me to Manny, our heroine, who is, you know, this powerhouse of a woman who's gone through a lot. I would love to talk a little bit about her, and just she's got a lot of layers, as Donkey would say. She's like an onion. And I just wanted to talk with you a little bit about how you unwrap her a little bit, because I think on the surface, it'd be so easy just to make her this strong workaholic woman, and kind of push through that. And you've got lovely layers with her.
Oh, thank you. You know, I think that with Manny, those layers actually, unfortunately, came pretty easy to me because I've been able to go through some of those tragedies. I've gone through grief and loss. And really, at the end of the day, my friends were there, you know, and some of my family has been there, but I really needed the support of my friends to be able to get through a lot of the layers, as you spoke about with Manny. And I think that's what really gets her through her journey, is to rely on her friends, and those friendships end up being family ships. And so that was a really big part of the book for me, was identifying the fact that she is this really strong CEO. She has this successful company, you know, it's a Fortune 500 company. And she can do an interview like it's, you know, in her sleep. She has no problem getting up in front of Good Morning America, the Today Show, being interviewed on the red carpet. There's never really been an issue. But then when she starts to break down the questions that she's being asked about her heritage, her culture, and she doesn't have the answers, that's when Manny starts to really crumble. And I think that those are the layers that are really important to me, because I was never really confident enough to speak about my culture, especially in my 20s or up to my mid 30s. I had a really difficult time even admitting the fact that I was South Asian. So a lot of that was put into the character with Manny. And I also think that Manny, you know, she can be funny, and she's one of those, like, she says things and you don't even know she's being funny, and she just kind of like says it on the fly. And I love that about her too. And she's always willing to take a risk, you know, whether it's her first Indian dance, her first sari, And she also is confused by what love and lust is. And I think that unfortunately, I have been too. And the person that she may think she's in love with, she may not be. And I think that part of the journey is for her to really figure out what the difference between falling in love is and falling in lust is for the sake of an empty heart.
I feel like that takes us to Nick, because, so we won't give any spoilers in the chat, and you will get to learn more about Nick, but you find out about her fiance pretty quickly on in the story. So we won't give any spoilers, but I have to say that Nick was such a frustrating character to me, Sonya. I just wanted to go through the pages and do violence to him. And
well, you got his name wrong, so it's Adam. So which means that you didn't even want to remember him. So that's great. That's fine. He's not a memorable character. I love it.
Adam. Oh my God. I don't even know. I had his name written down as Adam and I still made his name to Nick.
You know what? I think I know why, because I referred to, I'll just say this, it's not a big spoiler, but I referred to Nick Jonas and Priyanka Chopra. And I think that you have referenced Nick as Adam. That's why. Yes.
And I don't pick Nick Jonas, just to put that on record.
Okay. Yeah.
He's a lovely man. Adam. I would love to talk about him, partially because I feel like he is the type of man that I dated all through my 20s. And you captured, I'm in Waterloo region. We are one of the tech hubs. We have a ton of tech entrepreneurs in this area. And I think there's something about this workaholic tech culture that I just wanted you to talk a bit more about, because you freaking nailed it with him. And that might be where I'm.
I love it. I have to tell you that your honesty, I am embracing it so much, because I did do this deep dive of going into this dark hole of reading my reviews one time, which as an author, you should never do. And there were a couple of reviews that were really upset with the fact that I had created this character, Adam, and they were just adamant on, there's no way that a man like this could ever exist. You know, you made him sound so horrible, so angry, and how could Manny ever date someone like that? Actually, Adam is based on someone that I dated. And quite frankly, at the time, to give that person credit, I was also a workaholic. And I think that that is part of Manny's journey. But both of us were not necessarily understanding the relationship, because we were so focused on our work relationship and really being able to be strong, successful, leaders in our industries. And so it's not that Adam is, the A word. He's just, pardon me, he just hasn't been in a good relationship, and I think he's trying to make a mark for himself in the industry.
And I think, I feel like it was somewhere, but we've talked about, like, sometimes you just haven't found the right person for yourself.
Yeah. And no, that's a great point. But also to add on that, Adam was the right person for her at that time, because I think that with what happened, with adding the spoilers in, that I think even though we don't necessarily like Adam right away, I think maybe the first few weeks he was the right person for her. And that's okay, because we eventually grow out of relationships because we need something else or someone else. And I think that's part of it.
And I think, sorry, you just made me think, we grow out of a lot of relationships in our life, not just romantic relationships. And I think, as a society, especially kind of our generations, we feel like we have to cling on, like we have to be friends with our same friends from preschool, and you dated your high school sweetheart, you still need to be with him. And you talk a lot about the book. One of the things that I loved about Manny was her bluntness about, like, sometimes relationships come to an end and you move on and you have to thank them for that gift. And you played with a lot of relationships where people felt like they owed the other person to stay. And I'm getting more philosophical, I guess. I'm taking us a bit away from the book. I'll lead us back, but I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that, because I feel like it's such a strong message that I think a lot of men and women really just need to hear, period.
Yeah, the thing is, I think that when we don't hear it, we settle, right? So oftentimes, and I've been in those situations too, is that unfortunately, many of us, from my point of view as women in particular, and I think men too, we feel like we have to hit certain milestones in our life. And whether that means getting married, you know, having a family, having children, if by a certain age you haven't, you kind of feel like you sort of have to settle for the relationship. And I think that that was the message that I was really trying to have sort of sponged throughout the book, is that you don't need to settle. That's why the breakup agency existed. And that's what Manny really was doing with her journey, was that she wasn't just settling to be a woman who didn't understand the South Asian culture. She really wanted to learn. She wasn't going to just settle in the relationship that she is in or is going to be. And I think that was a big part of the overall theme of the book. And I think you're right, you know, particularly for those of us that are still single, it can be a really difficult path, because we're not often sure whether we're sort of getting into this, again, this rabbit hole of just taking on something for the sake of it, because our friends and family are now inviting us out to these dinners where you meet a couple, or, you know, it's +1, and you just sort of stick with the person because of that.
I am used to being the seventh wheel all the time, and
yeah.
I'm embracing it.
You and me both, girl. You and me both.
All right. Well, next time we will just meet up and we will be
yeah, we'll be each other's dates. There you go.
Okay, I have a few more questions about the book, and I have a few more questions. I'm going to get nosy a little bit about your life. One of the, you know, your knockout scenes are definitely when Manny and Sammy go to the wedding and the pre-wedding and the build up to the wedding. And there's 2 questions I have for this. One, his family is such a delight. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of his family in his life, because I feel like they just added so much to the book, and they could have, like, there's a couple characters that I would like their stories now next, please.
Oh, okay. I love it.
But can we talk a little bit about just those family scenes and, you know, the importance of what you're showing with that found family and the idea of family and relationships? And you touched that a little bit with arranged marriages and the you know, the responsibility of bringing people into relationships and families. But could you tell me a little bit more about that whole family dynamic with Sammy?
Yeah, you know, and again, this comes from my point of view. And of course, everybody, particularly in the South Asian culture and Indian culture, have very different point of views when it comes to family dynamics. But for me, traditionally, you know, as one of 3 sisters, we were kind of always pushed into the direction of not necessarily dating. I don't think that was a theme in our house. And I'm pretty sure that's why I took off at 19. I was like, woohoo, I get to date, you know, now my dad's not going to be looking for me or the guy that I'm about to date. So it's not a conversation, particularly in my family, even in my extended family, that we ever talked about. Dating was certainly off the table. Not even until I would say like well into our mid 20s or 30s before it was like, when are you getting married? You know, then it was okay to talk about it. But the dynamics of that family, in particular, when you talk about the aunties and the uncle scenes, I really wanted to make sure that I was talking about scenes that had happened to me. So I didn't want to play into stereotypes. And, you know, unfortunately, or I guess fortunately for me, because I think I added a little bit of humor to those scenes, that I've been cornered. I've been to weddings where I've had an uncle corner me at the buffet line as I'm going up for my, you know, 3rd piece of naan, and said that I'm about to miss the exciting train of marrying his son. And if I don't get that train now, you know, there it goes. And that has happened to me. So I really felt like I wanted to be true to the family dynamics in my family. And yes, there are those family members that exist. They all know that. But the family is also really rich in love. And as you get to meet Manisha and Sand and all the cousins, which, you know, is a large part of the book later on. And the 2nd book is actually based on Manisha, who everybody tends to love.
Yes, I want her story. Excellent.
Exactly. And so a part of, you know, Sammy hiding the fact that he's dating a Caucasian woman is a strong theme that I saw over and over again in my home with my cousins when I was just 11 or 12 years old, and looking up to these cousins who are in their 20s and were interested in dating someone who was not Indian. And that was a huge problem for people in my family. So, obviously times have changed, but you're also looking at the children of immigrants who are having to tell their families back in home in India that their children are marrying non-Indian, partners. And for some reason that was slightly shameful. So I think like part of that shame is still in Sammy. And I think he didn't realize until later, which we won't say anything further, but his family is really what brings him to his own journey of realizing that they're there through thick or thin. And I think he always knew that, but he just was like being the nice guy Sammy that he is. So all those themes of family are certainly things that I've gone through.
And I loved how Sammy worries about hiding secrets, and it made me think about worries and secrets about most families that are in tune, like his family. They know all the secrets anyways.
They do. They do. You can never pull a fast one on your mom. Come on, you can never pull a fast one on your Indian mom. There is just no way. She knows everything. She knows everything. She's been through everything. She's read your diary. Like she knew what was going into the diary before you even put it in there. So for me, like that's Sammy's mom and dad. They've got eyes everywhere. And it was weird because, just to touch on that really quickly, but some people were also chatting online about like, I can't believe that the family was so nosy and like, had all this information on Sammy. But hey, listen, that's my family. Sisters can have conversations about me till 1 o'clock in the morning. And then if I get on the phone with them the next day, they're just like, oh, so what's new? Like that's just the way that our families work. And I think people can relate to that because it's the typical, Christmas dinner and, Thanksgiving dinner is just like that.
I know I'm from a smaller town and I could not go anywhere without running into one of my dad's friends. And so by the time I was at home, he'd be like, I saw you were out with someone. Who was he? Why were you with him? And I was like, oh my gosh, Dad.
Let me tell you. Same thing. I actually grew up in Guelph, Ontario. And I got to tell you, one time I was trying to be really sly and I was dating my first boyfriend ever. He was coming to Guelph to meet me. And so I decided to go to Riverside Park. No one's ever going to be there. And I'm holding hands with them, which is like a huge no-no. And who do I see across the park? My sister with her boyfriend. It's just, we were freaking out. Like neither of us even knew we were dating or had boyfriends. We just were like, saw each other and went the other way and never spoke about it again. But it's just way worse in a small town. Yeah.
It really, really is. I'm trying to think. I have a few more questions. I want to keep going on the family stuff, but I need to ask follow up. We were talking a little bit earlier, so this is a bit of a leading question, but you were just talking about your first boyfriend. You've talked about being an expert in breakups, and we have talked about you are dating now. How has the lead up to publishing your book, like, are you dating now, and what is that like as a lead on breakup in romantic comedies?
It's actually hilarious because it's hilarious because I'm older and wiser, I think now, but I was out with actually a friend on Friday night, and I think we want different things now because I just spent 6 hours with him, and I just remember thinking like, this is a great relationship where you can burn the entire day with somebody, and that to me is more important than I remember back in the day trying to put together a really nice outfit for a guy to be impressed by. Like, who cares? If you don't like what I'm wearing, forget about it. So I think that my priorities and my values have changed. And also, like, a couple of days ago, I was talking to someone who is really close with his mom, and that just like had my heart, burst. And I was like, marry me now. But I just that relationship with your mom is so important to me. I've, unfortunately dated a couple of guys who didn't have really great relationships with their moms. And I can certainly really respect the fact that circumstances happen where, that can't exist. But when it's really superficial and you're choosing not to speak to your mom, and I think that can really hinder a relationship that you have with your significant other. So I've got some deal breakers, you know, and that's one for me now. And I think I'm at a place where I can have those deal breakers. And I just wrote a book. It's an instant bestseller. I'm allowed to have deal breakers.
And I think more people need to have deal breakers because, to your point, it goes to your values and, you know, what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So important, and is really important for Manny and Sammy, because I think they have such a lovely character growth arc. Their relationship is so lovely because you really get to see both of them. And I want you to talk a little bit more about Sammy, because I mean, if you're writing book boyfriends, I think you have nailed it with him. So tell me a little bit more. We talked about Manny being a bit influenced by you. Can you tell me a little bit more about where Sammy came from?
Oh, you know, I get a lot of that, and there is no Sammy. I wish I had dated a Sammy. I think Sammy's out there waiting for me. You know, he is. He's got, like, I'm literally swooning over thinking about Sammy right now. Did you hear it? But he's so stylish, and not in the sense of what he wears necessarily, but his words. And he's so caring in every move that he makes. And sure, you know, there's moments of aggression there because he's so frustrated with a few things, but he puts himself last. You know, everyone else comes first. And I just think there's something so sexy about his approach, which, whether he goes in for, you know, that sweeping kiss and, you know, one leg up in the air, and it's like, oh my gosh, you're just like, you got goosebumps. I'm waiting for that. Can that Sammy come here? Like, where is that Sammy? But I certainly think I did not model Sammy off of a previous relationship or anything. Although I did have an ex once say that to me when he read the book. He's like, I'm Sammy. I'm like, no, you aren't, else we would be together. So he's certainly not Sammy. But yeah, I think Sammy is. I went through a period of time where I also did not want to date South Asian men because I was trying to understand. I had a lack of understanding when it came to being South Asian. And so I think for me to take a step back and really not have anything to do with my culture, I figured to date a South Asian man was the opposite of what I wanted to do. And now I'm like, bring them on, you know, Bollywood babes, here they come. Like, I would love to be with a South Asian man. That's really important to me. So Sammy's the guy that I will end up with, but Manny and Sammy and Adam, you have to figure out that own twist because I'm not going to spoil it for you.
I'm going to go back because I know this is a big theme in the book and one that we've touched on very little bit, but is really about Manny, who grows up much like you in North America and is very focused on being American. And you know, I think that's a typical story of a lot of people whose homes aren't necessarily, like, they come from a different culture, regardless of where it is. They just want to acclimatize into their culture. And I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that experience of Manny. I know you've done interviews talking about your own exploration into your background, but just talking about, you know, how that happens for her.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I feel really comfortable talking about it now. And I think that if you had asked me that question a few years ago, I probably would have danced around the answer. And that just comes with confidence and really being able to appreciate my culture. And, you know, I think that you nailed it. It was really about assimilating and your climate and your environment, and growing up in a place where I only had maybe a handful of other Indian families in my small town. So the easiest thing for me to do was look like other people that were the Smiths and Jones. And I went through the phase of blue, gray contacts. I bleached my hair blonde. And now I just like want to give that little girl a hug because she was lost in the sense that she was still trying to discover herself in the community that she belonged in. And I think, you know, for what it's worth, my parents worked so hard to also try to settle in a situation where they were immigrants and, you know, working very difficult hours to be able to provide for 3 girls. And, you know, they didn't always have the time to teach us everything. And so, you know, even though we celebrated our culture as much as we could, I didn't really celebrate Diwali or go to a lot of Indian weddings because I hated getting into a sari or to an Indian suit. Now you can't even take me out of one. Like, I wish I'd worn one tonight, but I feel like, yeah, it was really hard for me. And it wasn't until my mid 30s that I actually started dating someone who was Indian. And he taught me the beauty of our culture, the beauty of our language, the beauty of our traditions in our culture. And how I use that in the book was through food, through fashion, through feasting. You know, I really wanted to bring that out in the colors of the weddings leading up to the wedding. And I hope I did justice to it, in my point of view, at least.
And I think you did. And I think we have
Thank
to talk about food, because goodness, your book needs a disclaimer to not eat when hungry, or to not eat when hungry.
Yes.
Can we talk, this is a bigger question, but just, can we talk about the importance of food in relationships?
Yeah, I know. You know what? I got to tell you, I used to date someone who didn't eat cheese. It was like the worst thing ever. How do you have a charcuterie board with no cheese? Like, this relationship's going nowhere, right? It was really, and he didn't eat cheese because it's like a dietary restriction. He just didn't like the feel of cheese. So it was like off the table. But yeah, food is like a big thing for me, at least. You know, I want to get into a food coma. On Friday, I went out for a burger, like it was a huge burger, a plate full of fries. We had bread, and it was just, we couldn't move after, you know, we're like struggling. We wanted dessert, we just couldn't do it. But those are like amazing moments to have when you can share food, and it's so intimate. I think that the ability to, I remember watching an episode, this is how old I am, but when Jessica Simpson and Nick Lachey came out with the reality show that they had way back when, the both of them, when they were married, used to do this thing where they would go out for dinner. He would order a meal, she would order a meal. They would get halfway through it and swap meals. And I just thought it was the cutest thing. You know, it's like, it's your own little relationship thing you have going. So I love it. I think food is a big part of a relationship.
And I think it can, to your point with the gentleman with cheese, it can make or break.
It broke. Oh, that broke.
One of our attendees, Kate, said she once dated someone who didn't drink hot beverages, and that became a total deal breaker. And yeah, Kate, I agree. I dated a guy once who was very, very focused on his weight and he was a bodybuilder. And instead of eating shortbread that I had made, he brought himself cucumbers. And at that point, this is not going to work.
No, those are just like, you know, the thing is, it's one thing to like say no to certain foods, but then it's also like trying to cook those foods, right? So like, how do you have pizza without cheese? Like, what kind of pizza is that? You know, I just think for me, it's a massive deal breaker. So sorry, guys.
Must eat cheese. There we go.
Yes. Hashtag must eat cheese. Yes.
So we have talked a lot about characters, and I'm going to go into some of our Q&A shortly. But what I'm curious about knowing is so this is your debut book. You have a full-time career on top of this. And I know we often get a lot of people who are following along who are aspiring writers. And I think it's so easy to look at a lot of our authors that, you know, write full-time and can turn out amazing books consistently and have that amazing leverage to do so. Mm-hmm. Can we do some real talk on a real life job and writing a book and writing now your second book?
Right.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. Listen, real life is that after we're done this call, I got to do some work. And that's the reality of it, is that even though it looks amazing on social media, and trust me, it is. I have so many pinch me moments. I've been so lucky to be able to be involved in some of these galas, these parties, and just the love I'm feeling from the community. But I have a PR agency that I run full time. I have clients and they expect me to be at my best when it comes to providing for them. So it's not what it looks like on social media. Unfortunately, I'm hoping that I do get to become a full-time author at some point. But right now I'm trying to manage both. And that also means I have a deadline for my second book, which is due in June. So I need to find time to be able to write that book as well. And real talk is, you know, very few authors get six-figure advances. Those are the ones that we often hear about because that's what makes the news. And that's unfortunately not the case. And you know, you have to earn your living through the books that you sell. So if I decided to hype myself up this week and my PR was just like overload, it was because I was trying to sell books. You know, that's how I plan on making my income. But I also know that I wrote Sari Not Sari in a way that, to me, even though it's a great book, I needed to see it on the small screen. And I don't know if you got that feeling, but it definitely is a movie/TV show. And so, you know, I'm hoping that that's where another stream of revenue also comes from eventually.
So you made me desperately want to go back and watch. I got really into some Bollywood movies in my teens and my early 20s. And that is what, like, all I could picture was, when are the musical scenes starting?
Yeah.
When I want the Netflix adaptation of it, please.
Well, let's cross our fingers for that, because yes, that's exact. And that's why, yes, totally, because it's on my vision board. And that's, you know, I think that's why when earlier we talked about it being heavy on dialogue versus the formats of the scenes, is I wrote the book in a way that I knew readers would want to see a movie or it on the small screen. And, you know, that's how I am. That's how I did things. And I really wanted to push this book forward in not just the element of it being words in a book. It'll be something else hopefully in the next year.
And so I often ask authors, you know, like, when did you decide to become a writer, like a novel writer? You have obviously been professionally writing for a very long time. But tell me, like, what was Sonya's path to fiction writing? Like, have you always wanted to write a novel? Was it something that saved you during the pandemic, as you kind of did comment a bit on?
Yeah, so it's funny because, like, during the pandemic, I actually started unraveling some boxes, and I went through a bunch of things, and I had journal after journal after journal that I had kept since I was 9 years old. And a lot of them are, you know, as women, we write about relationships, or, you know, the guy who has the blonde hair, blue eyes, Walker, who is next to me that I never talked to, but then I became friends with later. John, what's up? And so, yeah, I think that I always had it in me, but unfortunately, I just didn't grow up in a culture that really pushed arts and that industry on me. So it wouldn't have been a path that I would have taken anyways. And it just didn't seem like a suitable career for me at the time. And so I think I just got to a place where I didn't care anymore. And I thought I could juggle my full-time job with this side hustle. And like I said before, it helped me get over a relationship and the pandemic. It was an outlet for me to be able to really find some time to hone my skills at writing and creating something that was laughable, and I'm still able to laugh at it. So yeah, I think that I have been writing for a long time, and it just took some time to make it happen.
I think that is I remember realizing in my 20s that, like, I could actually publish a book. I'd always wanted to be a writer, but I just didn't think people actually ever had these careers. I don't know why.
Yeah, me too. I always thought that you had to know somebody, you know, to get in the industry. And I'm like, who do I know? First of all, nobody. That's not going to help. Or I just kind of figured in my head that, and this is just like so crazy, you know, well, somebody in the relationships able to afford for someone to be able to sit at home and write. And so you just don't know, because I didn't know anyone in the industry to provide that information for me. So I'm glad I did it, you know, and I'm also happy to answer questions about that. Is now I have avenues for people to DM me or message me and say, look, I need some help. And I'll always provide that help, because I feel like if someone had talked to me about it a little bit earlier, or if I had someone to talk about it a little earlier, I probably would have started my career a little bit earlier as a writer.
And now I'm going to put you on the spot as a reader, and I have a couple questions for you.
Yeah.
One is, what romance books inspired you? Like, what are your favorite classic romance books? And I don't mean classic. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say how classic are we getting? I'm old.
I mean, I was starting to read romance in the 90s, but like, what books do you think of when you think of, I am joining romance writers? Like, who are those authors that you're like, my book is going to be on this shelf with
That's really funny because I'm a big Oscar Wilde fan, and you know my book will never be on that shelf. But I think that anything that I know about love, I sort of taught myself through all of Oscar Wilde's letters, and so swoon-worthy. And I just loved how he swooned over men and women, and it just kind of created like this huge space in my heart for to be able to have those kinds of relationships. But I grew up on, you know, Judy Blume, the First Kiss series. Like I read a lot of smut and the Harlequin romances and stuff that I remember. I was reading a book and it had this, you know, half naked man on the front and his long hair. I think it was Fabio. And my mom walked by and she just was like, I know what you're reading, you know? And yeah, of course it was nasty, but I would love to see my book on the same shelf as one of those books. Yeah, maybe a Judy Blume book. Emily Giffin, I love her. Emily Henry. These are some of the newer authors. Though they're inspiring because they've also helped me in my career. I did actually have them both use their platforms and put my book on their social media. So that really helped me in terms of my career.
And I think something, and I couldn't help but watch the pictures of so many of our amazing Toronto and local Canadian authors at the Toronto Library Gala that has finally come back to being in person last week. And this is more of just a comment on your dress was gorgeous. But
thank you.
I think it's just a reminder of just how warm the author community is to each other. Like you support each other so much, and it is so lovely to see as as a watcher.
Yeah, you know, I have to give a shout out to Marissa. She's on my cover and she's like my long lost sister. Like, where were you my whole life? I met her and she and her instantly, like we just bonded. And I'm still waiting to meet Samantha Bailey, you know, again, women who really took me under their wing and hadn't even met them yet, just kind of slid into their DMs, you know, popped in a few emojis and we were good to go. We had a great relationship. And I think that's really been helpful to me because often I love Simon & Schuster. They've been so supportive. They took me on as a debut author, but sometimes you're afraid of asking too many questions. And so it was nice to navigate through people who had already been through that journey. And so biggest shout outs to Marissa and to Samantha.
We are huge fans of both of them over here. So this leads me into, what are you reading currently? We just named some big authors already. But what, I finished Sari Not Sari. What should I be reading? What's on your night table?
Well, I haven't had time to read because I'm working on my second book. So The Fake Matchmaker with Manisha is due in June. I haven't even had any time to read, but oh gosh, what are some of the last things that I've read? Oh, you know what I read? This has nothing to do with romance, but I actually read The Four Agreements, which is it's a small book. It's probably less than 100 pages. And Tom Brady, before he goes into any Super Bowl, reads this book. Okay, he swears by it. It's the reason he's won every single Super Bowl. It's just a quick read, and it kind of takes you to a place of not judging people and really living your life day to day, knowing that you live the best life. And it was a very pure life, and it really reminds me when I need a good kick in the butt. I'm just a debut. I'm only 4 days in. Sonya, relax, get off your high horse. So it was just a nice little read. And I would totally recommend that to everyone because, hey, Giselle and Tom Brady are goals when it comes to a relationship.
Yes. There's one that I would love to see a story on because I'm sure there's some really good stories there.
Oh yeah. Secret stories too.
Okay. The chat needs to know, did you read Sweet Valley High books?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I wanted to be the Sweet Valley High twins. I actually followed them on Instagram, the two of them. I'm like huge fans. And so they were the typical women or teenage girls you wanted to be, beautiful blonde hair, the most perfect bodies. And I loved reading the stories that they were engaging in. So I think I even watched the TV show. Yeah. I really enjoyed the Sweet Valley High twins.
So you were in it. I was also as well. And I have not seen the revamp. Oh my gosh, where's Kayleigh? The Netflix.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it either because I don't think they're in it though, are they? The original twins? No, they aren't. I feel really old watching it now, so I'll only watch whatever the twins are in.
I have a question that sorry, this is a little bit of a long one, but just commenting that you are beginning kind of a new career as a successful author, and you know she has such respect and admiration for those with the courage to change directions. What advice would you give someone who is perhaps considering abandoning the status quo to take their lives in a different direction?
Wow.
Great question.
Yeah, no, and this very unsolicited advice: do not abandon, abort mission, do not abandon. No, I think that, I think everyone always says to follow your dream, which I think is really important, but you also have to have a cushion. And if you're in a place where you can do that, congratulations to you. I couldn't abandon my full-time job, and so I had to sort of figure out a schedule where I could do both, but you can certainly take a different direction in your career. And I don't think that age really matters, and I think that my advice is to do it. Find the time to do it. I had to write at 5 o'clock in the morning. There's friends I didn't see for many, many months. I missed a lot of events. I missed a lot of birthday parties. And I think they just got used to me not coming anymore and stopped inviting me. But the lead up was this book. So I think that, this is kind of a little bit of it's one of those things that everybody always says, and it's going to sound bleak, but you only live once. You got to do what you have wanted to do. And I live by vision boards. I made a vision board, and I put a lot of things on that vision board. And, we were earlier talking about the Good Morning America list that just popped out before our call. And that was on my vision board. And now Sari Not Sari is on that list. So I think you're capable of doing everything and anything you want to do as long as you see it happening.
And I just had a question pop up about your vision board. So that was perfect timing. It's like you fed into this question. How valuable has your vision board been for your writing journey? You just touched on it, but if you just, for anyone who maybe doesn't know what a vision board is, do you want to talk about your process? Because everyone has a slightly different process of fleshing out their vision boards.
Yeah, and I think you can. I think it's absolutely up to you to decide how you want to make it. I have a friend who actually created one on his phone. So I am a little bit old school. I have a cork that I use, like a cork board that I use, and I collect magazines and I cut everything out. And on my vision board, I had Simon and Schuster. I had an instant bestseller. I've had certain things on my vision board that have already happened to me, and I get really specific. So I think one of the things that's worked for me on the vision board is to put down timelines. So not specific dates, but specific months. And that's been really good for me to be able to check that off of my bucket list. And so that's really worked for me. And I can honestly tell you everything last year that was on the vision board happened. So this year I've added like a boyfriend, like the bigger things. We'll see how those go. Yeah.
Okay. So we need an update at the end of this year.
Yes. I'll be back for sure.
Okay, perfect. I have a question for you about your writing process. I'm just checking our time too, because I think I have time for 2 more questions. This one is, do you plan out your book and then write, or are you a pantser?
So I'm like one of those just word dump people where I literally had 4 days and I wrote 30,000 words, and it just was like a word dump. And it probably made no sense, but I had written like the best book, Stephen King was going to come after this and everybody would be on it. It's like, no, it was crap. It was a load of crap and needed a lot of editing. And for me, what works is to really just dive into it. And a lot of the mic drop moments that happen in Sari Not Sari, because there's a couple, which I hope, Kayleigh, you were like, whoa, where did that come from? I didn't know those moments were going to happen until I went in for the redraft and the redraft. So I think for me, the best advice is just write as much as you can in one weekend and then start to flesh out your story over the course of the next 3 months.
There were a few chapters, and I will not even give little bits about them, but I had to stop and go like, hold on, wait. And I had to reread a couple pages and like, they did say that.
Yeah. I know. And you're like, why didn't I figure that out? But even I didn't know. Like there's one where I was like, oh my God, did that really happen? Yeah.
Yes, I think at that point I went back and flipped through and was like, Oh, okay.
Yes. You're like, how didn't I get that? Yeah. I know.
So you can, me at 2 a.m. was like dying in bed over this. So there we go. That can be your quote for your next book.
I love it. And the thing is, so now imagine as a writer, when you have written those scenes, there's no way you're sleeping because your mind is racing a mile a minute and you just want to keep adding on to it. So don't plan on getting any sleep when you're writing your first draft. It just does not happen.
Doesn't happen. But to your point, revision is where a lot of magic happens.
And I was lucky, my editor at Simon & Schuster, Lori, I'm going to give her a big shout out. Honestly, her and obviously my editor in the UK, Molly, and working with Jasmine as well at Simon & Schuster Canada really helped me hone my skills, especially as a new author. And you know, as a debut, you kind of go in there thinking, I don't need any help. You know, it can't be that difficult to write. There's a lot of stuff out there that no one's even edited before. But the way to tell a story really is crafted so well when it's in the right hands. And I had the right hands, and I had really loving and giving hands who walked me through the process. And so I think that made the journey so much more easier for me. And really, look, I'm still staying in the industry, so I didn't run away. So I think you need someone in your corner like that.
And my last question, and then we'll let Ronnie come back on. Okay, so we're going to hang out with Manny and have a couple drinks. What is Manny ordering and what are you ordering?
Manny's definitely not ordering a Jameson bottle of wine. Let me tell you that. You'll understand that once you read the book. But she would order a very expensive glass of champagne. I think that's what she would do. And I would order a glass of Barolo. I think that I really enjoy a good glass of red, and I feel like that's what we would be cheersing with.
I like it. Sonya, well, this is a cheers to you and your
Thank you.
Seller, and I cannot wait to get my hands on the next book.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot to me.
So thank you so much for joining us as we celebrate your first week on the board.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. What a great conversation. And the chat room is just, everybody's wishing you good luck. Great advice. Thank you. We are so excited, as Kayleigh just said, to see what you write next. So we will be keeping our eyes peeled. Thank you to the audience for being as amazing as always. And thank you to May from Simon & Schuster Canada. She's just wonderful. And if you are fans of Samantha Bailey, like we are here, we're actually our sister blog. So another non-romancy blog, because Samantha Bailey is more darker and
thriller.
mystery.
Yeah.
Yes. We are going to be doing an event with her on Thursday, May the 26th at 7 p.m. It's a thriller event. So if you also like to read thrillers, that is a great event. I will put all that information up somewhere so everybody can look at it. So have a great night, everybody. Enjoy the spring weather we are having, unless you're out west, and I think you all are going to get a bunch of snow.
No.
Here in Ontario, it's going to be 18 degrees, so we're going to enjoy that. And good luck, Sonya, with the rest of your week and all your events. And thank you for joining us. And bye for now, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Have a great night. Take care. Thank you.